Okay, good morning, Bethlehem. Welcome to the Chairman Show, sponsored by the Bethlehem Republican Committee. Today, I have a very special guest, John Heimerdinger. He's the vice chair of the Bethlehem Republican Committee. We're going to have a nice conversation, but before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about party unity. So, as we see, we have kind of a lot of factions in the Republican Party. We have real conservatives, we have moderates, we have, people that focus on individual issues. We have Trump fans, we have DeSantis fans. But I think we have to remember that the most important thing is that we're all battling Democrats. Democrats are the party that are in control, that are destroying our town, our state, and our nation. And the only way we're ever going to overcome that group is to unify as a party and to win over some Democrats. That doesn't mean that we have to give up our values and principles. What it means is that we have to build a winning coalition. You can't do that with just one group. So unfortunately, just Trump fans or just DeSantis fans or just people that are, really strong on one particular issue is not a big enough coalition to defeat the Democrats and get our country back. So I just want to remind everybody, regardless of what camp you're in, we need to make the Republicans a big tent party, a party that brings in a lot of different perspectives and ideas. Yes, we remain strong on our conservative values and principles, but we listen to people and we understand that it's either Democrats or us. So just because somebody may not agree with every single policy item on the Republican platform doesn't mean that we don't want them part of our coalition. So just remember, unity is very important to our party. And as we're having these little internal disputes, the thing that we're really trying to do is change the direction of our town, of our state, and of our country. And the only way we're going to do that is to build a large enough coalition to defeat the Democrats. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Now I would like to introduce John Heimerdinger, the vice chair of the Bethlehem Republican Committee. John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I was born in upstate New York. Um, well, I was born in Mount Kisco. I'm sorry. I lived in upstate New York for many years. I lived in Lake
For some
Placid.
people, upstate is anything north of the city.
That is true. That is true. Like my family lived in Lake Placid for many years. I still have
It's
family.
beautiful up there.
It's a great place. We still have a home up there. Somewhere that I do have some roots too.
Yep.
My dad, due to his job, kind of led us around. We went down to New Jersey for a brief stint, which was a great place to live as well. And then we landed back in New York State. I spent most of my formative years in high school in Clifton Park, which was a great community. Pretty similar to Bethlehem. I really enjoyed that place. Eventually when I kind of set down my own roots and, I was like, I'm going to go to college. I went to Franklin Pierce University in New Hampshire, took a stint over there, and then ultimately transferred back here to good old New York State to SUNY Albany. And, since then I've just kind of, I became kind of enamored with Albany. I thought like a lot of things were going on in that area, in that community. And, I decided to
Now,
invest.
who was the mayor at this time where you were kind of...
Jerry Jennings was mayor, and you had the three cities like Troy, Schenectady, and Albany.
Yeah.
You saw like the other two cities weren't doing so well, and I just had thought like, wow, around 2006, 2007, I'm like, I'm going to start investing in Albany because I think there's some really great things on the horizon.
Right. So before you go any further, I just want to say that Albany was a great city, and I think Jerry Jennings, although he's a Democrat and we're Republicans, I think did a great job for Albany. It was clean, it was safe, it was thriving, and I can completely understand how in 2006, I mean, I went to school, SUNY Albany, I got 4 degrees at SUNY Albany. I went to CBA when it was on De La Salle Road over by Albany Med, and I too loved Albany, right? So I can completely understand why it seemed attractive in 2006.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for years I had lived at SUNY Albany, and I'm like, wow, I'm paying a lot of money to live there. I'm like, I should just buy my own two-family or buy a place here and set down some roots. And ultimately, that's what I did. I started out with one kind of like humble place, and over the years, as I was looking into other careers, That was always something that I, enjoyed. It was something I was interested in, acquiring property. And it slowly happened over time as I worked various jobs, and as, my career options changed, it actually came to the forefront, and that's pretty much what I do solely now. I own a vast number of properties. I manage them all. I'm a sole owner operator,
Yep.
and then I own several, a couple businesses.
Now this didn't start out as your full-time job, right? You worked in
It's not.
insurance for a while, and then basically as you bought more and more properties and it took up more of your time and generated more income, you made it your full-time gig.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't know if you wanted to meander into some of the other background, but I did do commercial industrial sales for Lowe's. I like selling business materials.
Sure.
I had a pretty good background in sales. I did that for a number of years. Then I went into the insurance field.
Yeah.
I did like auditing and workers' compensation. I really like that as well. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, like when I got married, and then I was in the process of buying my own home here in Bethlehem, right in Del Mar. I needed some additional time to like fix up my home and get it to the level that I wanted it at for my expanding family. So like I left my job, and then I took a little bit of a leap
Yeah.
and was like, hey, I'm going to do this full time. And I'll tell you, it was a difficult decision.
Yeah.
I did like what I was doing, but it was also hard in the fact that I was like, I'm going from a 9 to 5 to now I have to make up all that money on what I'm doing
Right.
professionally as a landlord. I'm like, I'm not getting, it's not like you go in and punch out or punch in
Right.
at 9, you go,
Right. And you have other people depending on you, like your
Correct.
wife and your child, right?
Correct.
So it's not like, oh, if you go bust, it's just about you.
No.
It's like if you go bust, there's other people that affects. The other thing is the reason why I got into your background and kind of the transitions is because I want to make it clear for the audience that people are generally rational actors. And so you make decisions based on the parameters at any given time, whether that's where to live, where to invest, how to allocate your money, all of those type of things. So when the government raises taxes or increases regulations, makes the regulatory environment more onerous, it has real impacts. So, you may make decisions in a snapshot given the given parameters at that time, like 2006 when you decided to go down this road. Unfortunately, 2023 looks very, very different, and that has real impacts on your life. And we're gonna get to that, but I just want people to understand that when you make decisions on where to live, where to invest, how to allocate your money, where you're going to work, all of those type of things, it's based on the parameters at that time. So when government keeps changing things, it can have real negative impacts on people like you and your family. And I think you can, talk a little bit about that and kind of the direction that that's going in, maybe, where it is now and the fears and the concerns about down the line. But before we get there, I wanted to talk about how you got involved with the Bethlehem Republican Committee. Basically, what was the motivations? And, because obviously you're busy, you got a lot going on. I don't think you or I ever thought we would get involved in local politics. That was never like my dream or something that I thought I was going to be doing. Most people, they want to take care of their family. They want to manage their career, get educated. Most people don't think like, okay, I'm going to donate hundreds of hours to some organization for free, right? But there's reasons. There's good reasons. So for you, what were those reasons?
Well, again, like I said, I'm in the city of Albany every day. I wake up, I'm in there usually by 8. I have a place where, like I call it my shop. It's pretty much where I have a bunch of tools and various things that I need throughout my day.
Yeah.
And it's like my base of operations. And like when I drive into the city, I try to, make sure all of my things, all of my places are in, working order and whatnot. And I might have to respond, like I said, it's my base of operations. So I'm there, and I see
So when
things.
it's minus 11 degrees
still
and
there.
pipes are freezing up.
Yeah, I'm getting my torches out. I'm making sure that I have all my PEX materials and whatnot. So I mean, for me, it is a job. Like there's a difference between like what I call like a happenstance landlord, or somebody who owns 1 or 2, or their mother died and they've inherited this property and now they're just like a landlord. I do this professionally. I do this to put food on my table for my 3-year-old child and my wife. You know, like you said earlier, whether they like it or not, their wagon is hitched to mine. So the pressure to perform is very serious in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I'm there every day. I'm doing work. You know, some people think that landlords just, like are
Sit back and
fat
collect
cats,
money.
just
like the Monopoly
yeah,
man.
It's
right?
like I'm in a Scrooge McDuck vault somewhere, just throwing money around. But that I can tell you that's not the case.
in the cigar-filled back rooms.
And people depend on me. You know, like when they have maintenance issues or sometimes financial issues. You know, I got a call from a tenant the other day who their car wouldn't start. And she's like, "Can you jump my car?" You know, I mean, is that something that falls under the landlord preview? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I've also known the lady for 10 years. Yeah. So, when I can, I try to help out.
And this might fit better as we progress more into the issues, but I just want to say personally, I was with you one time on a call, and one of your tenants didn't have the full rent, and you were very, accommodating. Yeah, you're very accommodating about saying no problem. She told you your situation. Everybody thinks landlords are pounding their fist on the table on the first of the month. Give me all the money, or I'm going to throw you out. And that's not reality, right? Because you both are in a mutually beneficial relationship when things go well, which is you need them for income and they need you for a place to live. And of course, flexibility makes sense for all parties involved. Of course, if somebody's been there for months on end and they refuse to pay, that's a different story. But somebody who says, "Hey, I need some help. Can you work with me?" You're more than willing to do that.
Jim, like some of what I do maybe just boils down to like simple mottos or whatnot, and maybe you think this is maybe a little funny, but whenever somebody gives me effort, I'm willing to give them effort.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, like in that case, I'm not going to name names,
of course,
throughout this, but I mean,
just a generic story.
That woman who I've dealt with for many years, like as long as like I have masters and people I have to pay as well. So I mean, she came to me and she was like, "Hey, X, Y, and Z happened.
Exactly.
Can I give you 200 this month and 200 next week?" And as long as somebody is willing to give me effort and stick to their word, I'm, then I can plan around it and I can work with them.
Of course.
It's when it gets like, people can't stick to their word. People have me meet them and waste my time.
Or they ignore you. They won't communicate with you. You're trying to get a hold of them and they won't respond.
And like you said, the reason that I'm pretty, nice about that is I try not to I don't want to I don't know for better words, income shame somebody or something. People have things that happen throughout their lives. People have sick parents. People have cars break down. People have X, Y, or Z happen.
We've all had.
We
those
all
things
have
happen.
that stuff.
I came home one time and my hot water heater was gone. That was $2,500 I didn't have just laying around. So I know all about those issues.
So I mean, I it is a different story when it happens every other week.
Yeah.
Then that can be an issue. But I'm not, as long as somebody gives me effort and at least communicates it effectively with me, I'm never gonna come down on somebody like that. But that's how I operate. I can't necessarily speak for all landlords out there.
But I would say this, that generally speaking, the perception doesn't match reality. The perception is that landlords are pounding their fist, ready to kick everybody out, and that's just not reality. Reality is landlords need their tenants as much as the tenants need landlords, and flexibility makes rational sense most of the time. Of course, if somebody's trying to put one over on you and live somewhere for months on end without paying, that's a different story. But when somebody is sending you money and saying, "Hey, I don't have the full rent right now, I'll have it in 3 weeks," or like you said, as long as they're an honest person, operating with integrity, communicating with you, it makes sense for all parties to be flexible.
Correct. And I mean, it's no different than a bank or somebody underwriting somebody. As long as they do what they say they're going to do, I can actually trust them. Yeah. And I will. But I would say trust has to be verified.
Also, I would say organizations have less flexibility than the small landlord that can make their own on-the-spot decisions, rather than some big management company or whatever.
Correct. I mean, that's why some of the legislation and some of the things that we're now seeing, not just Albany, but nationwide. In Albany, they tried to do, some things that would be, you have a lot of rights groups or whatnot, like championing things that they want to have protections for for tenants.
Yeah.
But as you know, I maybe it's a little, yes, I'm a landlord. At one time, I did rent. You know, people might say this is biased, but um, the housing affordability due to some of these legislation or some of these rules and laws and whatnot are just going to lead to housing unaffordability.
Yeah.
Like low income or even like affordable housing in the city of Albany is like over. Like, I mean, I hate to say this, but since the beginning of COVID or whatnot, since some of these protections have been in place, like some of these small to mid-sized landlords are just gone, or they're just leaving the state. And like you said, it just creates less competition. And somebody like me or some of the other housing providers, will be willing to actually work with people.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you're just some complex or if you're just some nationally owned corporation, people are like, oh, you got to meet this criterion. You got to have this insurance or renter's insurance, or you have to have your debt to income ratio be this or that, or else, or, oh, by the way, you also have to have $50, application fee.
Yeah.
Like, the flexibility is non-existent.
Right. So let's talk about what are some of the things that the city of Albany or the state of New York has done to landlords that specifically has made your job harder, less lucrative, and maybe is discouraging to either prospective landlords or people that are currently in the business that are thinking about getting out, which obviously is going to have an impact on the housing supply and the affordability of housing. So specifically, what has transpired that you have said this is not good? I know we've heard like tenants' rights. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, obviously, there has to be landlord and tenants' rights. But, for example, like unfortunately, every once in a while, I do have to go to court due to, some people not upholding their obligations. And,
And we're not talking about a month or two, right?
No, we're not talking a month or two.
Right. What do we do? What's kind of throw out an average time by the time when you go to court and you're saying, okay, I have to evict somebody. Give me an average amount of months that they're behind. I understand some are longer. That's it falls in the mid. Just give me an average.
Probably 6.
6 months.
Correct.
6 months of rent. So let's say an average rent is $1,100, something like that. Okay, so you're talking about $6,600 that isn't in your pocket, that you signed a contract that should have been paid to you, and you've been providing not only the housing but the upkeep and maintenance of that unit.
So the way I look at it is, I mean, like, especially during coronavirus or even lately, when you have some tenants doing that, I mean, I'm a service provider. I'm trying to feed my family. I don't go to a traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
So when I'm not getting paid that money, like, it has disastrous effects on me and my family and my child. And it's like, I feel like this last couple of years I've been working twice as hard, but I've been taking home half as much money.
Right.
And it not only has it been difficult with tenants and whatnot, but there's also, like, the prices of things have been going up. I mean, my building materials are like, if inflation is only 0.1%, when I buy windows or bathtubs and PVC is, like, my distributor has got a 42% price increase. I mean,
sure.
It's
I
no surprise that, like, some of these rents are going to be going up. I mean, Albany has been a traditionally, like, baseline, some of the apartments were, like, lower or under market. And now, unfortunately, that, some of these other things that we're feeling, whether it's price increases, having to now underwrite, if you will, like, against, somebody who could, really, like, I was just in court for somebody who hasn't paid me in 15 months.
Yeah.
15 months, and it was $1,100. I mean, if I had access to $15,000,
right,
I could be finishing up one of the other projects I'm on right now.
Right.
Like, now I have to, like, move monies around and
And
scrimp and save to get that other one done.
And just to be clear, because we like to educate and we like to talk about the real drivers of things. So when we talk about inflation is not a magical thing. Inflation is driven by the regulatory environment. It's driven by taxes. It's driven by recent COVID mandates that have created labor shortages, and it's created by printing money. you're diluting the cash that people already have, right?
Yep.
So if there's $1,000 in the marketplace, and all of a sudden you print up $1,000, now there's $2,000 in the marketplace. Your dollar is worth 50% of what it was worth last year. That's just the mechanics of economics. So just so people understand, inflation didn't come out of the sky. It didn't get sprinkled down like pixie dust. It happened because of policymaking.
Correct. So I've been taking, so back to what you're saying, like some of the challenges that I face. I mean, I have a lot of great tenants, and some of them have been, tenants for a very long time. And, obviously they're not part of my family, but I definitely have like a high regard or respect, or some of them are, like people I really do enjoy.
Yeah, it's like
actually seeing.
it's
no
extended
different than
family.
having correct.
Yeah, it's extended family, sure.
And
they're living in your home, in your property, right? I mean, that's what
I try to treat. I might own the building, but it's their private property. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't just like come
Invade
in there
their
and
privacy, of
invade
course.
their space or this or that. Like, unfortunate, or not unfortunately, but the only time I'm really there is when they need me.
Yeah.
And I take that pretty seriously. Like, I try to, whenever I'm needed, like I'm there. I try to be there within like 24 hours at most.
Yeah.
But that is also like, I don't think a lot of people realize like that onus that I have on me. It's difficult for me to go away with my wife. It's difficult for me to spend time with my family or my child, because like I'm on call all the time. But I try to service, like you said, those people are now in my extended family.
Right.
So I mean, I wouldn't want to leave somebody without, because I wouldn't want to be left without.
So a couple things. One, just going back to specifically, is there things that have been done, legislation passed, that has or will have a major impact on being a landlord? So first, discuss that.
Well, I mean, there are several laws that have been passed within the last several years that are making it more difficult, and then there are some on the horizon that will make it difficult. I'll start from, the historical.
Yeah.
Like years ago, it was, during coronavirus, some of the laws that were passed were like people couldn't be evicted. Then there was, which made it difficult, especially if you had like a larger larger buildings. If you have one person that's kind of running amok or doing things that, could affect the quality and life of the other tenants. Now you have a situation where you have one person that you now actually can't get rid of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people think that like evictions were just like, landlords like want to evict people. I don't.
Right.
Because it's going to cost me money.
Right.
And furthermore, like, not only is it a lengthy process, not only is it a costly process, but then once they leave, now I have to turn over the apartment.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, now I'm losing time on that, so I'm losing more money.
Yeah.
Now I got to actually go there and take my time off other projects or other things, and now I got to spend money. So like, it's in my interest to try to like work with people, because I don't want to be constantly turning apartments and costing myself money. So usually when we get to court,
did you have a lot of tenants that didn't pay during COVID when those protections were put into place?
I had a number of tenants. I mean, like, just like everyone, it was interesting that most of the people that were most affected were the ones that came to me and were like, "Hey, John,
of course,
I only have $200," and like I said, they gave me effort, and I gave them effort in return, and I'm eternally thankful to many of the tenants that did the right thing.
But you saw an uptick in non-payment.
In opportunism, I will say, like some people that could have totally paid, they just decided that they don't have to. Or
that's basic. That's basic incentives and disincentives, right? I mean, if you take away the incentive to pay and you just say, you can keep your apartment regardless of whether you pay or not, what's the incentive to write that check every month? Now, some people, you would say integrity, honesty, truth, but not everybody has those values, right? So you can run into situations where people say, well, I'm protected, so I'm just going to stop paying.
Well, it was unfortunate because some of the tenants, I thought maybe I was naive, but like, again, I'd been renting to some people for a pretty decent amount of time, and I thought maybe I had a better rapport with them, and I guess I guess I was wrong, which does happen from time to time. But I mean, I would have thought that sometimes a relationship would have been better.
I would say this: if money can split up families, it certainly can split up landlords and their tenants, right?
You're right.
So sometimes money can make you do bad things.
But then what was interesting is then yes, people always talk about, oh, there was ERAP or LRAP, and these organizations were so inefficiently administered. It was like a joke.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, did I get money from some of them? Yes, I did. Was it horrendously late? Yes. And then
Did it make up for all the non-payment?
did it make up for, sometimes people got into such arrears that even when ERAP or whatever came into fruition, it didn't even cover what they owed. Like, they were still more months into the hole. And then now I had an issue where I had to sign a stipulation that said I couldn't evict them for a year.
Right.
So then, like, literally all I did was, delay the inevitable.
Yeah.
I mean, how am I supposed to fix a relationship with somebody who literally told, kind of, disrespected me for years on end, and then like wanted to go forward? Did I have times where, like, I did have somebody where, yeah, I mean, I don't really hold things against people, so I endeavored on with some people that actually happened to.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, for other people, I could see where it could be an issue or it could be a problem. So some of those mandates or whatnot made it very difficult, to do business. You had government coming into my life telling me that I can't collect money or that I can't mitigate my losses.
Right.
I mean, to me, that seems a little crazy. I mean, am I the property owner? What's the point of property rights at that point?
So I think it is a property rights issue, and again, no one has problems with basic tenants' rights, allowing you to have a little bit of a time to figure out what your transition is going to be and that type of thing. If you can't pay a month or two and all of a sudden you're out on your butt, that creates societal problems, right? So some sort of basic early on. But we've talked about, I mean, you have tenants that have gone, what, a year and a half of non-payment?
The one I'm currently, I have one that I'm in the process of right now, and it's 15 months.
Right, and that's, if we're talking 18 months, we were talking about if you're talking $20,000, right, of arrears, I mean, not every landlord has $5 million laying around in the bank, and it's $20,000. That's
I know.
Yeah, I mean, not every landlord can just write off $20,000. I think for most of us, $20,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, some people make half of that. If you're making $40,000 a year, I mean, that's half your money.
Yeah, and there's also opportunity cost, right? So you have a bunch of probably things that you need to fix, things that you want to renovate. And when people are not paying, you have to choose what you can do and what you can't do because there's less capital involved.
Well, the interesting part about what you said with your opportunity cost is I don't even know if it's really an opportunity cost, because it's not that I couldn't rent it or like because of market failures or this or that. It's I didn't even have the ability to. I didn't have the ability to mitigate my loss.
My opportunity cost example was meant to say that you're always fixing, renovating, doing things with your properties, and when people aren't paying, there's less money in that pool, and so you have to make some difficult choices, because if you had that $20,000, there's more things that you could do. You were saying before, if I had that money, I would do this project or I'd finish this project, but right now I don't have it, right? So those type of things have real impact. And then the other thing I would say, and then we'll wrap up kind of the landlord stuff and move on, but the other thing I would say is, when government taxes and regulates something and makes it less cost effective, less lucrative, you drive people out of that industry. So, all of these tenants' rights things have an impact on the amount of landlords that are willing to get into the business. And so when you have less landlords, you have one of two things. Either you have less units, or you have more units that are managed by large management companies, and the rents for those large management companies are going to be much higher, and the flexibility is going to be much lower, right? So they have armies of lawyers. They're not going to sit around and dicker with you about $100 here and $100 there, right? They're going to look at whatever their governance is for their company, and they're going to follow the letter of that governance. So it's really in everyone's best interest to have a lot of people like John Heimerdinger out there buying rental properties, forming great relationships with these tenants, working with tenants when things get hard. Because if you don't have that, you have the faceless entity of government and these large management companies that now infiltrate that space and crowd out the smaller guys that get out and go do something else. And there's going to be less affordable housing. The experience is going to be much worse, and the burden on society in general is going to be much higher because, like you were talking about before, they come up with these funds, right, to help defend tenants or to help pay for rent. Where do you think that money's coming from? That money's coming out of the taxpayer. So it's really just socializing the risk and transferring the wealth from the taxpayer to that specific industry because it's not managed properly.
Well, it's just like, even now they're talking about like a right to counsel for tenants. And obviously everyone should have, the access or the right to counsel or whatever. And I don't want people to make, bad legal decisions. But like I remember reading the article and they're talking about, oh, well, all the landlords have counsel and this and that. I go there pro se. For the most part, it's expensive to have legal representation.
So let me stop you. Right there. This idea that everything is a right really gets under my skin, and the reason is this: if you regulate and tax an industry into melees, and you have all of these problems that government has created, and then you create this new right that tenants are entitled to legal representation. My question is, where does all the funding come for that?
Well, I obviously it's going to come from taxpayers, so it's actually some of it's coming out of my own pocket.
So I guess what I'm saying is it's like a bottomless pit where the government keeps doing things. They create more problems. Then they make the claim that to solve these new problems, government has to do even more, and it's just this downward spiral.
Well, it's like a vicious cycle because for me now when I have to, like go to court or this or that, I mean, I know I'm already losing money. It's not like I've tried to make agreements with the person, or I've tried to either have them move out, or I've tried to like do payment plans endlessly. Like when I'm going to court, it's not for lack of me trying. It's usually things are broken down or they just won't uphold their end of the agreement.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, what kind of kills me with some of the right to counsel, it's like I don't think all these landlords are just have the money, like especially the smaller or the medium-sized landlords. It's not like they have even access to these type of monies, especially after they've been getting not paid for a very long time.
Yep.
Like even like in Albany, you have to be if you're an LLC or corporation, you have to have counsel. So I mean, like some of that thought that, oh, they all have counsel. Well, that was dictated by the city.
Right.
You have to have counsel.
Right.
Like I'm able to, I'm a sole proprietor, so I can go in pro se.
Right.
And I usually try to do so. Not only to educate myself, but also to make it more affordable. I mean, but when things become more unaffordable, or when I have to now like be worried about things or whatnot, like unfortunately, it's no different than like car insurance. If you have a risk pool that is getting into a bunch of accidents or pushing up the rates, like the other ratepayers are going to pay for it. So unfortunately, like even some of my other tenants, like I try not to like raise rents. Like once somebody's with me, they're pretty much there forever. And I but when I'm getting tax increases, when I'm getting waste collection fees and all this new stuff,
you can't absorb all that.
I'm not like Walmart where I have all these different products, and if the price of gas goes up, I can manipulate a couple of them or whatnot. So it's not like the only thing I have control over as a landlord is the rent.
Yeah, I think what that boils down to is. If the government makes being a landlord more expensive, you have to pass on some of those costs. You can't absorb all those costs. And so taxes, regulations, all of those things have an impact not only on the landlord, but they also flow down to the tenant. And I think a lot of things that government does in the name of, creating affordable housing or increasing tenants' rights end up having the opposite effect when you look at the macro picture of what's going on. So moving on from the landlord tenant stuff, And before I get back into Bethlehem, because that's kind of where I want to finish up now, I want to talk about. So you were talking about how great Albany seemed to you in 2006. We fast forward to 2023. I can tell you, Albany scares the heck out of me. It's not a great place to live anymore. It's in serious decline. Violence, drug addiction, all of that stuff is exploding. Mayor Sheehan has been probably one of the worst mayors of all time. I mean, her leadership has just been terrible. And I want you to talk about the changes that you've seen from the Jerry Jennings Albany that we all loved and enjoyed to the Mayor Sheehan 2023 Albany. What are you seeing when you go over that bridge every day at 8 a.m.?
Jim, this is like sometimes a little difficult to talk about. Like I said, I am pretty passionate about my job and like what I do and going into the city, and it is kind of hurtful to see how like the city has come, especially when I graduated SUNY Albany. It looked like it was on the up and up. I mean, we had a city that was founded in like 1654. It's a very old
Ancient
city.
Ancient city.
I mean, it's been around forever. And like when I was getting out of college, I was like, I think this place is happening because I mean, a lot of the place is so old that eventually major urban redevelopment is going to have to happen, and I want to get in on that.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I started off and getting some things, and the city at that time was a good partner. There, yes, there was some crime here and there and whatnot, but I mean, like, I remember going out as a college person. Like we never worried about necessarily bad things happening. I mean, yes, maybe that was a little bit of college cavalier, but the city was on the up and up. I mean, like I said, compared to the other two cities, like Troy and Schenectady, I mean, it was poised to push forward and leave them in the dust.
So where is it now?
Now, like you see Schenectady or even you see Troy. I mean, that riverfront area in Troy is great.
Yeah.
I mean, they've spent a bunch of money there, and you walk around and you just admire the architecture of some of the buildings, and you're like, wow, this is really great. You go down to Schenectady, whether you're for or against a casino, it's definitely helped that area.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I feel like those two have pushed ahead, and in Albany, we're like left in the dust.
What specifically in Albany have you seen decline? What are things that stand out as you're unhappy with the direction of the town? What's happening? What's going on?
Well, there's a multitude of things. I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily just one thing, but I mean, like Albany now.
We got to talk about those
Albany
things.
now is almost like a failed state, or failed city if you're a person of political science. I mean, like even the basic even basic city services are barely barely being done. There's like I'm having a couple issues with like trash pickup, which is something I pay for, and you would think would be something pretty easy.
Yeah.
But I mean, even just basic trash pickup, like in the city, employees are like almost demoralized. Like I talk with a lot of them. Like a lot of them provide a great service to our community, to that community. But it's like their morale is so poor. It's like it definitely is affecting the overall status of the city. I mean, even our police and first responders. Like, I mean, we are dealing with so much crime. Like, you asked me when I go into that area. Like, I have a business down on Lower Madison Avenue, and I'll tell you, like, if I could go back in time and not buy that place, I would.
Yeah.
Like, because going down, like, I hate to say it, but like owning that place is almost like I know, I'm sorry to say this, but it's almost like a death sentence. I'm recovering, drugs. There's violent people down there. There's, like people that have like mental problems, and I'm not equipped to deal with things like that. And neither are the other business owners. So we have these people that are like almost like community terrorists.
Yeah.
I can't, you call the police, you're talking about, wait times of like hours.
Well, I think Mayor Sheehan's hostility towards the police has had a big impact on their ability to do their job. It's not that they don't want to do their job, but the mayor's office has been very hostile towards policing. She brought in someone who is a big believer in the community policing model, not the broken windows model. And so you see crime spiraling. I mean, crime has never been worse in my lifetime in the city of Albany. And I know we've also talked about the drug addiction explosion that you've seen. I mean, nobody can make it in Albany's South End or even up that Madison area. Everything's failing, right? I mean, the restaurants have gone out. McDonald's, a multi-billion-dollar company, couldn't survive in the South
Correct.
End. And I know you've said that in your laundromat, you've had people with needles actually getting high
Yep.
in your laundromat, and you've called the police, and you've had all kinds of issues, and it's still happening. It's like a never-ending cycle.
It's a never-ending cycle, and I mean, you know, uh, let me first preface before whatever. I'm pro-police. I'm pro-business.
As
My
is
brother
the
is a
Bethlehem
policeman
Republican
for
Committee.
21
Yeah.
years. I don't blame the police in the city of Albany. I think a lot of them are trying to do the right thing, but they're in an impossible situation. There's their administration is soft on crime, and it's not allowing them to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
And if I was a policeman in the city of Albany, I would have a huge conflict of crisis. Obviously they want to do the right thing, but it's like they have their arms tied behind their back. So how
Right.
can they actually do things?
Right.
And
And if there's ever
based
an
off the-
incident, the mayor's office is the first one to lash out at the police, right? So they expect chaotic situations to go in some perfect sequence, and if it doesn't, they're the first ones to lash out at the police. How do you do your job like that?
You don't. And, a lot of these people, again, I've talked to many of them. I've had to call them, unfortunately. And usually when I'm calling them, it's not for something simple. It's usually something pretty serious. Like, I already know that I'm going to have to wait a very long time to get help. So,
Yeah.
when I'm calling them, it's usually something serious.
Yeah.
So again, I think they've had like they're down on patrolmen and women. Like they're fighting to fill cars. Like I said, it's an impossible situation to be in. I mean, they have all the social pressures of
Yeah.
just, hey, I'm a policeman, but everyone hates me.
Right.
And, like they're just like you or I, trying to do a job, but like, yes, I'm a landlord, they're a policeman. It's like we have this negative connotation against us that we have to work against as well.
And I think when you put more criminals back out on the street, when you make the police officers' jobs harder, and you discourage them from making arrests, taking people into custody, charging less people, deferring people from incarceration to putting them back out for one way or another. I think all of these things have led to, cashless bail, all that stuff, have led to the spike in crime that we see in New York State. And these spikes in crime, particularly in places like Albany, have such a cascading effect. So if an area is dangerous and there's a lot of risk, you have a bunch of things that happen. First of all, you have less customers, right? A lot of people used to drive into Albany to shop, to frequent the bars, to frequent the restaurants and other establishments. There's a lot of people that just don't go into Albany anymore. Why would you in the current condition it's in? And because of that decline in demand and some of the other things that Town Hall has done, people with money, business owners, are exiting. And when you get that exodus, you get less opportunity, less investment, your tax base shrinks, all of these things that we see happening in the city of Albany. And what are you left with, right? I mean, if you don't have people investing, if you don't have opportunity, jobs, decent paying jobs, businesses in your neighborhood, the innovators, the educated, if all of those people are fleeing Albany, what's left? And I think what's left is what we have, which is, like you said earlier, I think correctly, a failed city that's only going to get worse until there's a change in leadership and a change in mindset, and get back to some of the things that Jerry Jennings used to do to run a successful city and make it so attractive to you, to the point where that's what the direction your career took, right? Because Albany was so attractive. So yeah, it is scary, and what that leads me into is Bethlehem, because I don't think I ever had any intention of getting involved in local politics. You said you really didn't have any intention of getting involved in local politics, but what really scares me is the people in our town hall think exactly like the people in the city of Albany. It's the same mindset. It's the same policy making. They're going to phase out fossil fuel. They're going to bring in low income housing everywhere. They have the same ideas that the city of Albany has, and the fear is, what's to become of Bethlehem if the people that destroyed Albany are doing the same things in the town of Bethlehem. So with that, obviously, you and I had discussions about getting involved, because I knew you were passionate about the issues, and we had some prior conversations, and you ended up becoming vice chair of the Bethlehem Republican Committee. So what I would like to talk a little bit is kind of like your motivations for getting involved based on your experience both in Albany and Bethlehem.
Well, you know, seeing what happens in Albany, again, I wanted to touch on something that you just recently said. I mean, even, I own a bunch of buildings in the south end of Albany, and, I like that area. I mean, I've been there. There's a lot of good people down there, and unfortunately, some of the things that are affecting that community, like there are good people there, and then it just makes it more difficult for them to actually stay there. So you're having people leave, or again, a lot of their needs aren't even being met. Like there's barely any stores that even like service a lot of the people.
Yeah.
They have to go out to Walmart, or they have to go out to like Delmar or Delaware Plaza to actually get services, or to go to a food store, this or that. I mean, when all that business there like decays, there's just really nothing left. You have all these residences, but you don't really have a lot of single family. And like, yes, I'm a landlord, I get it. But like there has to be a little bit of a combination of some of the single family and some of the businesses to create a thriving community, and
Sure.
that's just kind of not what we're seeing. So when you ask me why did I get involved, I've been seeing like this steady decay in the city of Albany, and I'm concerned about it. Like you said, the same policies that aren't working in Albany want to be enacted in Bethlehem, where I live now. For many years I saved up money. I lived in a couple of my own two families. My wife and I, we've been scrimping and saving, and like, yes, it's expensive to live in Delmar or Bethlehem, and it was something that took us a little while to save up or to get to. It wasn't a starter place for us. It was something that we had to really work for, and like, isn't that the American dream? Like, if you work hard, you can get somewhere based off your own merit.
Right.
So we put in the time, and we were able to graduate, if you will, and get to a place that like we have a great home. We have a forever home that we now talk about. We really love it, and that's really what motivates me. So I'm here. We had about 8 years ago I bought this place. 3 years ago we had a child. We love where we live. We like our neighbors a lot. We love our home, and going into the city every day, this might sound mean, and I'm not trying to throw shade at like the city of Albany, but the best part of my day is the 5-minute ride across that bridge to come out to my home.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have to be that way, but like I was like, the motivation for me joining, and for many years, I didn't really want to get political, or like kind of be out there, but it came to a point where all of that stuff that I see, again, this year I witnessed 2 shootings. I had to go testify at a grand jury trial. This can't come out to Delmar, and I will do what like I joined the committee. You remember our first meeting, which is a pretty funny story. I'll let you get to that.
Yeah.
But I will I will do whatever I have to do to combat that.
Yeah.
Like, and I just I'm trying to raise my child. I'm trying to raise my family in a what is like, I remember being in Albany and I'm like, wow, they're killing it over there. I would love to live out there, but
Yeah.
I just don't have the money.
Yeah.
And for many years we worked, and eventually I bought a home that needed some work.
Yeah.
And the price of admission was high, but I got there, and now I have to protect what's mine. You know, I see what's happening in Albany. You know, because I have a, you know, I'm privy to something that maybe most people in Delmar don't really see, because I'm down there and I see a lot of the stuff. Just like a friend of mine who also owns some property, and it's a little upsetting, and I just can't let that cross the street or cross the bridge to where we live.
Yeah, I think the important part to address here is Albany was once a great place, and it devolved into the place it is now with bad leadership and bad policymaking. High taxes, high regulations, heavy-handed government is going to push the best people in your community out. Low-income housing, it makes absolutely no sense, right? Bethlehem is a place you go when you've made it. When you're stable enough and you've made enough money, you say, I want to move to Bethlehem because that's a great place to live, right? Transporting stuff from Albany or Schenectady or Troy or whatever into Albany artificially based on policymaking doesn't make any sense, right? We look around the country and we look at places like Los Altos Hills and Beverly Hills and some of these beautiful communities around the country. Some stuff in Connecticut.
You and I couldn't afford to live there.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I think we all look at these communities and we say, these are great places, and maybe someday I'll live there. People aspire to things, and it's good to aspire to things. My father called Bethlehem Camelot. And the reason why he called it Camelot is because he grew up on Sherman Street in Albany, which wasn't what it is today, but it was a rougher area, lower income area. His parents didn't have a lot of money growing up. They were hardworking, but they were lower middle class people. And when he moved to Albany, when he moved to Bethlehem, he couldn't believe how fantastic it was. And I'll say it's still good, but I think a lot of us feel like it's in decline. Over the last 10 years, our open spaces are disappearing, taxes are sky high, there's a lot of challenges with the schools, academic performance. We had this big fight over shrinking Delaware Avenue to one lane on both sides, which is going to take customers and people out of the area. I mean, that didn't make any sense. A lot of the 41 businesses in Delaware Ave banded together and pleaded with Town Hall not to do that. And Town Hall didn't care. They didn't listen to the business owners. They don't look at it like stakeholders, which is what any good town government would do, Republican or Democrat. They look at it like we have an agenda and we're going to cram it down the town's throat no matter what. And unfortunately, that agenda has failed all across the United States. It's failed in Albany, it's failed in Minneapolis, it's failed in Seattle, it's failed in Chicago, it's failed in LA, it's failed all over the country. And it'll fail in Bethlehem as well, right? I mean, this is not some one-horse town anymore. There's 37,000 people that live in Bethlehem. And if you administrate Bethlehem like you administrate Albany, we're all going to be looking to move. And I can say, unfortunately, Bethlehem was deep red for 150 years. It changed in 2003, I believe. It's been Democrat for 20 years. And I know a lot of people that are so frustrated with the bike lane craziness, the sky-high taxes, all of the regulations, losing our open spaces and our town's character, cramming low-income housing all over Bethlehem. There's a lot of people that have already moved. There's a lot of people that live in Florida and South Carolina, North Carolina, other places around the country, because not only were they unhappy with the snapshot, but they're terrified of where it's heading. And I can tell you, because you and I have talked a lot about this, that's why we got involved, because the direction of this town is not a good one, and it's going to continue to get worse. I mean, you look at the storefronts. We're at Uncrushable Nutrition right now, and Uncrushable Nutrition is fantastic, and we really appreciate being able to use their space. Just down a few storefronts down is Delmar Bistro. Delmar Bistro has won awards for how great of a business they are. They just went out of business. The announcement was made yesterday morning. Village Deli is now out of business. Village Deli is one of the best pizza joints in our town. We are seeing place after place fail. And although I'm not going to name any names, I can tell you there's two other things going on that people are not aware of that I'm aware of, because I talk to a lot of business owners. given our events and our sponsorships and things like that. There's a group of businesses that are teetering. They're getting very close to making that decision to close their doors. And then there's the other group that are still doing okay, but they once had a long-term plan to retire here, and now they're saying, when the kids are done with school, when I can kind of tidy things up, I'm out of here. I'm going to sell everything and I'm going to move. A member of our committee, big landowner, property owner, business owner, he's getting ready to sell everything and get out of New York. So, the end result is bad. At the state level, we have data on outmigration. Outmigration is largest in California and New York. Why is that? It's because of Democrat policies, the same policies that they're putting into place in Bethlehem, the same policies that they've put in place and are putting into place in Albany, and the same direction that they have at the state level. We see the results of that. The results are educated people, wealthy people, business owners, and so on are fleeing to lower tax, lower regulatory environments because they want to keep more of their own money. They want to invest and open up businesses. They want a more dynamic environment, and they don't like being pushed around. I don't think anybody really likes being pushed around. And the more independent you are, the less you enjoy it. So so that's kind of what I'm seeing in Bethlehem. But the reality is we're out registered by 7,700 Democrats. So I know kind of what I think and what I've been trying to do. You and I have done a lot of work together. You've brought a lot of unique perspectives to the committee. You've done a lot of great work. So talk about what you've done and what you think people need to do to change the dynamics of this town and put us on a better path.
Well, Jim, I want to try to uplift to some of the things that you just said. I mean,
Sure.
it is kind of unfortunate that you are having out migration. I mean, a lot of us people that live here in New York State, we take that to heart. That actually means something to some of us. And we've obviously, you and I have had many conversations.
Yeah.
Your father's buried here.
Yep.
Bethlehem means something to you.
It does.
It's something that intrinsically is linked to your background and to your history and to your family. I've been in New York State pretty much my entire life. This is a place that, I'm proud to say I'm a New Yorker. And it is a little upsetting when you have somebody again, like a Kathy Hochul saying, hey, you can just move.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to get into some discussion about that, but I mean, a lot of us
No,
take
it's
pride.
absolutely true. So Kathy Hochul said, if you don't like what I'm doing, you can just move. Republicans don't represent our values. She said something along those lines. And the reality is, she talked about New York as if she owned New York. And for some of us where our ancestors are buried here, we've already bought plots for ourselves thinking that we were going to retire and die here. It's a shocking thing to hear.
Yeah, I mean, my family's had a tie to Lake Placid since the early 1900s. And when somebody says that, it's actually a little hurtful, because whether you're Democrat or Republican, you should be, like you said, representing stakeholders of people in those communities and uplifting those communities. So, I do get a little upset about that, but you're asking what I'm trying to do. We're trying to get people engaged.
Yeah.
I don't think.
But the mechanics of kind of what are you doing to change the direction, and what do you recommend to other people?
It's okay to have conversations around town and talk about policy. A lot of people, this has been a taboo territory for many years. But I mean, if you want to actually stay in this state like I do, I really do love this community. I really do love New York State, and it really pains me to see this last year, my parents moved to Tennessee. So again, my father was born in this state, and we were actually born in the same hospital, which is kind of funny. And he lived here his whole life, and then finally he threw in the towel and left. And I still think there's something here to fight for.
Yeah.
And I think other people should feel the same way. I think other people do feel the same way. And you and I have been going outdoors. We've been knocking on a lot of people's doors in this community, trying to talk to people about Republican ideas. Not only that, but just common sense type things. Like, we're for, like, we're pro energy, we're pro police, or we're pro first responders. We're
Pro business.
pro business, and we don't want to see the quality of life here in town go down. I mean, those are pretty, like, I would say, basic, widely accepted principles. I don't, whether you're Republican, conservative, Democrat. I mean, I think we can all kind of get on board with that. Like, but why aren't we having more of these conversations? And I think, like, it's okay to be loud and proud about this. You and I are going out to a lot of doors and having these conversations, and I think people have just become a little more apathetic. If you want to stay in this town, like, we have to fight for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just talk about kind of action though. So you talk about doors. When you go to doors, you talk to people about what's going on in town. You hand them a flyer, and that flyer has our platform on it, right? And like you said, it's basic ideas: pro law enforcement, pro first responder, pro business, pro growth, pro energy, all forms of it. We're not against green energy, but we're against monopolizing it and making people go broke in that chasing and monopolizing it, right? We want to make sure that all forms of energy are available so that we can innovate, so that we can grow, so that people have disposable income, so they can send their kids to good schools and buy the house that they want and travel to places that they want, right? That's quality of life. That's what cheap energy does for people. 50 years down the line, maybe green energy will be cheap enough and affordable enough and scalable to the point where we can use that as our main source. But right now, we're just not there. And government arbitrarily deciding that we have to be is going to bankrupt towns, it's going to bankrupt people, it's going to shrink disposable income. So, we talk about handing out the platform, talking about what we represent. But what are other things that people can do and should do to help the Republican Party grow and ultimately defeat the people that are in town hall so that we can get better governance in our town? Like, just some of the nuts and bolts things.
This might sound, basic, but it's true. I mean, like, if you feel the same way, you have to, we have to, like, elect people that are like-minded, or even people that support our basic platform.
But how do we get there? How do we do it? Like, what are the elements of party building? So we talk about knocking on doors. What about making donations?
Yeah, no, people have to open their wallet. A lot of people like to sit on the sidelines, or again, we talk to people all the time, and they're unhappy with the, where the state or where the town is going, and they're throwing their hands up in the air, or they're like, hey, I have to leave the state. But it's like, well, you'd rather leave the state than go to events, get involved, volunteer, or, God, throw a $50 donation. I mean, like, I'm, like I said, I used to be a salesman. I mean, I'll ask for it. I mean, if anyone wants to donate, come and donate.
Yeah.
I mean, to affect change, you love, we talk sports a lot, Jim and I, and Jim always talks about, if you want championship results, you got to have championship effort. Yeah. Well, I mean, to get that type of thing, I mean, Jim and I, and even committees or committee members that we have, are donating hundreds of hours, thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And like, it's not something that we can also always just do on our own backs. Like, we do need other people to help us. We have a lot of people that are like all for it, but then don't show up to events or this or that. I mean, if you want change, you have to be willing to actually talk about change. I mean, if you want to be included and not on the sideline, like right now, we have a lot of, like, democratic policy that's going into effect in our town, and it's going to drastically affect all of us, and it's going to drastically affect our pocketbook. Yeah. And everyone's upset about it, but they're just tacitly approving it or letting it happen by not standing against it.
Yeah, so the only way that you can change town hall or policy making is with political action. Correct. Apolitical action is going to have no impact whatsoever. Hey, let's get together at some place and argue about issues and then go home. That's not going to change anything. The only way you change things is by getting people elected that are going to engage in better policy making. So for the town of Bethlehem, the Democrats run town hall. unanimously. They're unopposed. It's all Democrats. And the only way we're ever going to get better policymaking and change the direction of the town is by electing Republicans. So people have to get engaged with the Republican Party because that's ultimately the only thing that has any chance of working. So to me, that means, and it doesn't have to be all of these things, but it has to be some of these things for sure. Joining the committee, right? The bigger the committee gets, the more engaged people you have that are willing to do all the things that committees do, that party committees do, the better chance you have at winning because it amplifies your message exponentially. Every time you get somebody to come into the committee, they're talking to their families, they're talking to their friends, they're putting stuff on social media. So it literally is an exponential impact. Every additional person that joins the committee and gets engaged. You have to make donations. You have to financially support something you believe in because the only way organizations operate is with money. If we don't have money, we can't do anything other than walk around and talk to people. You know, we have to print up flyers. We have to put deposits down on event venues. We have a domain for our email address that we have to pay for. We have Constant Contact, which is an annual fee. There's all kinds of things that cost money. The more money you have, the more of that you can do. A mailer could cost $1,500. When you do a mailer, you got to be able to fund that. You know, unfortunately, mailers go out. 85% of people throw it in the mail immediately. They don't even look at it. But 15% take a look, and 15% are reached. So it's all these channels that you have to use to get to that critical mass to ultimately win elections, especially in a deep blue town where you're at a huge registration disadvantage. You have to outwork the other side. You have to outraise the other side, you know. So joining committees, money, events. Events are great to bring people together, to talk about issues, to share fellowship in the community. If you want change, you have to buy tickets to events. You have to go to those events. You have to participate. All of these things are kind of aspects of changing the direction of our town. Some of these people that I know that moved away, they were never involved. They never joined the committee. They never made a donation. They never went to events. And then they just threw their hands up and said, I can't take this anymore, and moved away. What I'm trying to encourage people, and I think you're a great example of it, what I'm trying to do is encourage people to say, don't make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you do nothing, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The worst of the worst will happen, and we'll all end up having to move away, and we'll lose our great town and our great state. But that doesn't have to be so. If everyone who disagreed with what's happening in town hall and in New York State got involved, we'd win. We'd win the next cycle.
At the same time, though, like, I totally agree with that, but and there's a lot of people who have that sentiment of, hey, I'm going to move or this or that, and it's like, well, I would challenge them. If you do want to move, then that's fine, I get it. But the first thing you better do is join your local committee, because for people that do have that mentality, moving away, just like my parents did to Tennessee, you think that that's not going to, like a lot of those pressures aren't going to follow you? You think it's going to magically end once you enter your new area of operation? That's not true. Like, these are fundamentals that we have to start talking about. There has to be like rational, conversations, just like this frank and honest one that we're having right here. Sometimes,
you can't escape these ideas by hiding, I think is what that boils down to, right? So I want people that are in Bethlehem that would like to stay in Bethlehem to fight in Bethlehem. I would like people to join the committee, buy tickets to our events, make donations, do everything that they can to support our effort. Change their registration.
Even some of these events, yes, we have events. The Spring Fling, like last year,
very important.
Awesome. We had Lee Zeldin. 155 people came.
Yep.
There was a band. It was awesome. We had Joe Pinion. There was all these great. You got to actually have FaceTime with like political people who most of these people would never even meet.
Yeah.
But it was also a great time. We had food and all this. But some of these events are also service events. I mean, we're not just some. Yes,
political entity. We're a force for good. I always say that.
We're a force for good, and we're also passionate about this community. Like, Bethlehem means something to us. That's why, we are taking such a stand on it.
Yeah.
We had we have a volunteer, the first responders thing coming up. Last year we had, our holiday meal service. We had, Craig Slurs was out there. You know, he was serving up food. We did. You know, for
Scott
anyone,
Bendette, our
Scott
assemblyman.
Bendette was there. I mean, we were down at the Bethlehem Grange, which is a great place. They were very nice people. We served 140 meals, totally on our dime, you know, to the community,
Yeah.
and you know,
Made some people's holidays.
and yeah, it was also, you know, it made a lot of people's holidays. Some people were elderly; they couldn't get out. You know, like we were willing to pick people up,
We
or
sent a few people home with extra meals.
so that they could get out to some of their elderly parents or even friends. I mean, you know, we have an aging population in this town, and it was actually, you know, I thought it was really nice and cool to see some of those people come out
Yeah.
and have, you know, have lunch or dinner with us because they didn't really have anywhere to go.
Absolutely. So I just want to say one thing about that is, you know, a lot of people see politics as kind of mindless red team, blue team. And I want to make sure people understand that our engagement is not about mindless tribalism. It's not about mindless red team, blue team. It's about good ideas versus bad ideas. And we're using the Bethlehem Republican Party as a vehicle for good ideas. So if you're a Democrat, if you're a conservative, if you're an independent, if you're working families part, whoever you are, in the end, I would ask you to evaluate the direction and performance of Town Hall and our platform. I would like you to look at those two and decide where you fall ideologically. If you love what's happening in Town Hall and you love the direction of this town, by all means vote Democrat, right? I mean, we want people to be honest and true to themselves. If they love what's happening, if they love what's going on, if they love the comprehensive plan update, then vote Democrat. But if you're frustrated with what's happening in town, if you don't like the direction, if you'd like to see better governance, we are the vehicle. We are the team that can change the direction of our town. And so we would ask that you support us in any way you can, whether that's changing your registration, voting for us, joining our committee, coming to our events, making donations, any of that type of stuff. It all helps us get to that critical mass that we've talked about.
And yes, just because it's a Republican event doesn't mean like people who are in an NOP or conservative or
We had Democrats at our picnic
you
last
can-
year. There were
we
Democrats at
like
our
to
picnic
break
last
bread
year.
with anyone. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a great time. I mean,
Exactly. Again, it's about ideas.
and it's about ideas, and people should be okay with like talking about, you know, some of these issues and whatnot, because it just gives people more of an understanding of each other and where we all fall. You know, it's, like you said, it shouldn't be red team or blue team. I mean, you know, some of these factions among both parties have gone so far one way, you know, like there's just no dialogue anymore.
Yeah.
Like people are, you know, like
It's good ideas versus bad ideas, and we see the Bethlehem Republican Party and the Republican Party in general as the best vehicle to carry those ideas to a place where we get better governance and build a better future for our town, state, and nation.
and that better governance, like, you know, like again with the fossil fuel phase out here in town. I mean, that just makes Bethlehem less competitive. It will, like, that type of stuff and those jobs will just go to outer line communities. They won't be here anymore, and it will
Correct.
make us less competitive.
And that's one of many things
Just
that,
one.
that Town Hall has done that has put us on a path of decline, and it will accelerate our decline. So with that, we're going to wrap up. We know this was a long conversation. John, we appreciate your time today, and we appreciate all of your service as vice chair to the Bethlehem Republican Committee. I just want to let everybody know that we have some events coming up. Craig Slurs, who's running for highway superintendent, is going to have a fundraiser on April 20th at the American Legion over on Poplar. That's going to be 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. start. We just had a candidate declare for town board, Teresa O'Neill, 25-year Albany Police Department and current nurse. We'll be getting some information about her first fundraiser out soon. We have our picnic that's coming up on June 10th. This is going to be huge. We had 155 people last year. We expect to have over 200 people this year. We're going to have all of our candidates. Steve McLaughlin is going to be our keynote speaker. Scott Bendette, our assemblyman, is going to be there. Chris Tague, our other assemblyman, is going to be there. It's really going to be a great time. There's going to be music and food and drinks and everything you could possibly think of. So we encourage you to go to our Facebook page and buy some tickets for that event. It's about the best deal you'll ever get for $30. I think kids 7 and under are free, and kids from 7 to 18 are like $10. So and like I said, for what you get for that, you get the band all day, you get the food, the drinks, everything. It's all inclusive, and it's a great time. We have a promo video on our Facebook page about last year's picnic, and I think you can kind of just see what a great time it was. We're going to have a golf scramble in September. That's September 23rd. That's going to be at Old Post Road. That's Scott Bendett's home course. So that's going to be a great time. And then the one thing I didn't mention is we're going to have a vets and first responders and their families breakfast at the Bethlehem Grange on May 13th. We're still working on some of the details there. We'll let you know those as we get them. The easiest way to follow everything that we put out is on our Facebook page. That's Bethlehem Republican Committee. Everything that we have going on, we constantly put up there. If you have any questions, you can email us at committee@bethlehemrepublicans.com. That's committee@bethlehemrepublicans.com. We really appreciate your time today. We're going to have Steve McLaughlin on the podcast next month, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.